Hi, I'm Lee Herbert, and today we're going to be looking at the Mars 300 wireless video system from Holy Land Tech. Now, to begin with, I should explain that my surroundings are a bit of a challenge. I'm on location at the moment shooting a travel show in Amman, Jordan, so I'm shooting this in my hotel room, so please forgive the backdrop. I had to make do with what I had. Let's get into what these are. To start off with, why you would want or use wireless transmitters. So there's a bunch of different reasons why you want them. The first one that I probably use it for is when I have clients on set with me. So if I've got a client on set, having them leaning over my shoulder, literally looking at the camera screen can be a bit difficult. Sometimes they can't get in there, it's a small space, what have you. So being able to wirelessly transmit whatever's happening on the camera to a monitor that's in another room or just a couple of feet away, and the client can watch what's going on as we're recording it, can be really handy. Now, having a client on set, that's a whole different story, but that's definitely for another video. Another time where you would use wireless transmitters is when you have to put the camera in a spot where you may not be able to see the screen. So for example, you may be putting it on a gimbal, or you might be mounting it on a car or an airplane, or even in a small corner or a tight spot to get a sort of wide shot of a room, and you can't actually be there to monitor the screen yourself. So being able to connect that wirelessly to a monitor somewhere else and see what's on the screen without having to actually be behind the camera can be really useful. Now, what's really interesting about the Mars 300 is where they sit in the market. Generally, when you're looking at a wireless video transmitter, you're looking at sort of starting at the $1,500 mark and kind of anywhere up from there. These ones are being sold for $499 US. Now, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, I always say you get what you pay for. So what aren't you getting? So to begin with, there is a little bit of latency, and they say this in the specs. So obviously, when someone's moving in front of the camera, there will be a slight delay in terms of what you see on the monitor wirelessly in terms of what's being in front of the camera. Having said that, when I've tested it, it's really not that bad. Now, it's not at the point where the latency is not bad enough that I would use this as a follow focus device. So, I might be wirelessly looking at the monitor and I'll be controlling the focus from somewhere else. I probably wouldn't do that because the latency will affect that. But if you're just monitoring it, like if a client's looking at it, if you're looking for another room, the latency really isn't that bad. It's not like it's a matter of seconds. I'd say it's almost like split seconds. And I'll show you some demo content now to show you what that looks like. The other thing is quality, and really I haven't seen a big degradation in quality. Now, where the quality is important is that if you were recording your final output on your portable recorder that this was wirelessly being transmitted to, if it's 1080, you're probably going to be fine. If you don't need to do a lot of color grading or correction for exposure and things like that, the footage is absolutely useful. If it's just going to the web, you'll be totally cool. But if it's for a more high-end professional process, and like you want to be shooting raw, you want to be capturing full quality 1080, then you're going to lose a little bit in terms of quality, but in terms of resolution, it'll do 1080 up to 60 frames per second, which is more than what most people require. The other thing to look at is they're really small. I mean, mounting that on a camera is really not going to be a big deal. So, that's your transmitter, that's your transmitter, that's your receiver. On the one side, you've got the video link. So you've got two lights. You've got one for video, got one for link. So link obviously shows that there's a link between the two devices. Video shows that video is being transmitted. You've then got a channel button, so you can use the channel button to switch channels if you're having interference. You've got, which I see is quite promising, a little USB plug here that says upgrade. So I'm guessing there's going to be upgrades to the firmware and the software as the years go on. You've got a pair button, so you can manually force them to pair, and you've got an on-off button. And I actually found I didn't even need to pair them. They came paired out of the box, so I just got these, popped a couple of batteries in, popped one onto my camera, popped one onto my monitor, switched them on, and they saw each other right away. In terms of connection times, it probably takes them about, I'd say maybe 10 to 30 seconds to connect, which, as these devices go, is not too terrible. On the other side, on the transmitter, you've got an HDMI in and an HDMI out, so you could have your camera going into it, and then on the actual device you could have a loop out for HDMI, and on the receiver unit, and this is really cool, you've got two HDMI out units, and I tested this, and you can actually have the signal going out to two monitors at the same time plugged into the transmitter. Now, in terms of range, Holy Land Tech claims that these, as the name would suggest with Mars 300, is that the range is 300 feet. I haven't really had much of a chance to test these. The best I could do in the hours or two that I had them before I left for this trip was I tested them in my house, and my house is probably about 40 meters long, and they held up just fine, didn't lose any signal, didn't drop out. Latency wasn't affected by the distance from what I could tell, and technically, while these are supposed to be just line of sight, I was moving between one wall and another, and I've got concrete walls in my house, and it didn't lose signal, so I was pretty impressed. Of course, having said that, here in the hotel, I left one set up in my room and walked about 3 or 4 rooms away, and by the time I got to about the 3rd room, I lost the signal. But again, that's 6 walls of concrete, so fair enough. So would I use these? Absolutely. I wouldn't use them in a situation where I need to have no latency whatsoever. I believe Holy Land has higher range models that don't have any latency and don't have any quality dropouts, and I'm looking forward to reviewing those. But in a lot of situations, I would use these. To begin with, because they're so small, I would use these in a lot of situations where I need to have my rig set up in a very small and light fashion. The other thing to look at is pricing. For $500 US, I think you're getting really great value for money with these. They're pretty well made. They're made out of metal. They feel metalish. They come with 5 antennas, so you've got a spare in case you lose one. Yeah, my only sort of gripe in terms of the hardware is they came with this attachment here where you can attach something so you can put it onto a camera. I would have preferred to have 2 of these. I only came with 1, so I would have preferred to have another one for the receiver unit as well. I think that would have been nice. But other than that, it came with a DC power. In terms of battery life, they use standard Sony NP batteries, so easy to get those, pretty cheap as well. They claim the battery life is about 3 hours, and I found it was even better than that. I actually haven't found how long they go because I didn't have more than 3 hours to sit around waiting for these things to run out of battery. So if you're thinking of getting into the wireless video space, I think this is a great entry-level product that's going to get you started and really give you ideas in terms of how you can use it and where it can be advantageous for your setup. Give them a go.